Today we're going to do a short video on Kofax's Kapow with integration to Snow and integration to Remedy. Two use cases, essentially the same use case really, but I'm going to open an incident ticket in ServiceNow. I'm going to do it two ways. I'm going to open it replicating as a user would, interacting with Snow through the web UI, and then I'll open another ticket that will be calling the REST APIs from ServiceNow. The next one will be with Remedy, and I will use the web UI with Remedy and open a change ticket. So first off, let me start. This is what you're looking at is the Kapow Management Console. And one of the things that I know there was an interest in using IVA, and to be able to have the IVA interact with the robot. So I don't actually have an IVA, but to show you how the IVA would be able to interact with the robot, let me go to our robots here. And let me narrow this down. If I was to look at this particular robot here, you can call the Kapow robots in several different ways. You can make a call to the Kapow robot through a human interface with what we call our Kapow caplets. Where you can enter information or actually just kick off a robot to go extract or do what it needs to do and bring back that information to you. The other way is through REST APIs, REST or APIs, we can SOAP. One of the things that we do that makes it easy for someone to develop to be able to integrate with Kapow robots is we actually let you test the robot and show you the API and show you here we're going to test the REST, and we'll go JSON. We're showing you what your inputs need to be. And when we run it here in a second, we will then show you what the response will look like. So here you see what the response looks like, so you can build out your application to interact with the Kapow robot via web services or APIs. And if I go over here to the APIs, I can show you the API. And then we show you what it would be in Java or C#. So we help the developers along that are building any type of integration to our Kapow robots. So with that being said, let me open up the designer. So in this case, what we're going to do is the very first step is we're going to actually load the Snow ServiceNow site, as we're looking at right here. And once again, as these are loaded into the application, we are not opening up a browser on the desktop and interacting with that browser. This is what's referred to as a headless browser, where we are communicating with it behind the scenes and not necessarily opening it up and navigating it through as like if some of our competitors do with screen recordings and screen scraping. So let's log in. Here we're going to enter our username, and all of these fields are pre-configured, and I'll show you here in a little bit if we wanted to add a field. One of the other things that we have that's a little unique for our product is we actually have a password store. So if I go back to the admin console and make this a little smaller, we have what's called a password store. And what we do in that password store is the administrator would then create a new password entry, just as I have here for admin. The username is going to be admin and the target system is Snow. And then this password is actually, if I open this up, I'll have to reset the password. It's no problem. I'll go ahead and do that. Let me put the new password in. So the only person that really actually is going to know this password is the administrator that enters the information in. And we'll save it. And then down below we actually create the token so that if I open this up here, this is actually my laptop that I'm working from, and it tells you what available tokens are, and then I would import this token so that as I run it through now, this next step, what I'm going to do is look up the password. You see I'm passing in the username, I'm passing in the target, and I'm going to pass that variable back in, or that password back in and store it in a password variable here. So if I actually go down to Snow password, you'll see that that's empty. I'll step through that. It's made the call to the password store and return the password. Again, it's encrypted. So the beauty of that is your developers never have to know the passwords to the applications as they're building out these applications. They only need to know, what credentials that they need to have in order to generate the password for their application. So now we're going to step through. We're going to click log on, and we're going to now create a new. Again, we're interfacing with that user interface in Snow, and we're going to create a new ticket. And here, there's a lot of frames in this this website. So what we're doing is actually, you'll notice here that we're just looking at that particular frame. So I've set that current window to look for this particular frame, and we'll navigate through that frame. So again, we're able to interact with drop boxes. Let me back up one here. So you'll notice this is a drop box. And off to the side here in my configuration, I can actually choose which thing that I needed to select from it. In this case, we're doing self-serve. As you see, we step past it. It updates that drop-down box to the proper value. Here this is where we could pass in a value that will be stored in, again, from that third-party application or the IVA. We could pass in the caller information, and we would enter that caller information in here. And you'll notice Claudio Luz, that's who we've chosen. Stepping through each of those items, I'm going to skip ahead here a little bit, let it walk through. We're checking the PeopleSoft CRM, and then I can hit the submit button, which would then go create that ticket for us. So let me go ahead and put this in our debug mode. So again, our debug mode allows us to step through our robot. We can actually step through this and put some breakpoints just as we would any other debugging tool, and work to those breakpoints and see what our values are, see what the state of the application is, those type of things. For this demonstration purposes, I'm just going to run it. And as it starts running, you'll notice that each of the nodes that it's stepping through are where it's working. So it's progressing fairly quickly. Now the login does take a few seconds here. This is one of the longest steps in the process itself. And now we've progressed on. Again, notice as we step through each step in the process, it's turning green. So what we're going to do with these values is once we retrieve it, we're extracting a few of these values. We're actually going to store them out in the database. So that would represent returning the values back to the third-party application. I open up the database here, and I have database incident tickets, just a simple table. And here you go, the latest one that we just added, which would be 106. And you notice it's in the planning stages, it's new, and the urgency level is low. So let me now go back, and let's look inside of ServiceNow. If I hit refresh on the incidents, here you see we've got the reset the password for Claudio Luz on PeopleSoft CRM. It's in the planning stages and it's new. So now let's go back and let's create another ticket, essentially the same thing, but we're now going to run it calling the REST APIs. So again, we're going to call ServiceNow's exposed REST API and REST Web Services, and then we're going to extract that information and we're going to upload it into the database as well. So I'm just going to run it for expedience purposes here. And you'll notice it was progressively faster calling the REST web service than it was using the user interface. Essentially, you're not having to step through all the steps in each of those, navigating each of those pages. So recommended if you're, or I think you, in your instance, you're actually running the ServiceNow on your own network, or you're able to expose those REST APIs, or REST services, or APIs, and be able to make those calls. This is going to be a lot more efficient than replicating a user interface. Although the user interface works just as well, this is a lot faster. If I go back and do a SQL query, here we are. We have two tickets. One ticket, the second one I open with the REST API. And you'll actually notice that here I put in the robot information that was relevant in the additional comments. So now, let's take a look at a third robot where we are going to update the incidents. Again, we're going to run a query against the database to generate anything that has represented that's new and needs to be updated. So again, this could be passing in the information from a third-party application to go update the ticket and let everybody know in Snow that the incident's been updated. So I'm just going to run this in debug mode. And you'll notice there were two records, and it cycled through both records. So there's 106 and 107, and they've been updated. If I go back into Snow, so you'll notice where we are in the priorities for these. If I go to one, actually, let me open up all, refresh all. In 106, we've now moved it from a new state, and we've moved it to in progress, and we've assigned it to an assignment group of the service desk. If we step into it, and how do we know any of this worked is we actually added a note when we updated it, and we said this has been updated by the Kapow robot. So that's it in navigating through ServiceNow and the integration. This could be any other website that you're actually trying to navigate through, so you're not limited in ServiceNow or Kapow. It's any other web applications or any other user interfaces that you may have to interact with. So let's close ServiceNow out, and let's go back into our robots. And here we are, we're going to execute and go through Remedy. Let me open up Remedies. So this is Remedies open access to trial period to anybody. So this isn't, again, ServiceNow is not running on my network. It's actually running on ServiceNow's sandbox. And this is open to anybody that wants an access to test out Remedy. So for this purpose, we are now going to create a change ticket here. So I'm just going to step through a couple places. I'm going to set the marker here where we're going to step through some of these items. And as you notice, we're going to provision a virtual machine. And again, I'm clicking through ahead to some of these different items, and you'll see where it steps through the web page and is starting to update that information. So you'll notice we're going to change this to expedited, again from the drop-down box. And we're able to select that information that would be relevant to opening up that change request. So I'm now going to run this in debug mode. And just as we saw before, we'll be able to watch the robot navigate the site with its headless browser. Again, we're not opening up a browser on the desktop or any of that other, as any of our other competitors might be doing. We're actually using a headless browser integrated into the application itself and navigating it that way. Now we'll tell you this one is not as fast as the Snow web UI. This is actually a little slower. Again, it's a public site that it's a trial site that everybody has access to and is able to use. But you'll see we're stepping through it. And once we've completed, what we're going to do is we're going to extract that incident number that we've created, which will be this number, that change request number, And we'll go back into Remedy and we'll pull it up and see it inside of Remedy. It's submitting it now, and the next thing we'll see would be the incident number. And there we go. We're closing the window out. We're logging out and closing the window. But if we go to back to it, 981. And let's go to change management. And here we go. You see that 981 has been created for them to provision a new virtual machine. So there's an example of Kapow interacting with ServiceNow via Web UI and REST web services, and Remedy using the Web UI. Any other questions or anything I didn't cover, please feel free to ask, and I'll answer those shortly. Thank you.